Hey, greetings, and welcome to Sunday Rants. I am your host, James Arnsberger. It is Sunday, September the 26th, 2021, and here we go. So I thought what would be useful would be to go back over a little bit of the framework of jury nullification. And, the whole history of jury nullification goes back hundreds of years, actually. And in the modern era that we're in right now, let's just take the last 50 years, if you will. I would say that we've had some pretty good examples of how jury nullification works, and probably a couple of examples of how it doesn't work. And by that, I mean the misunderstanding, probably, of what the actual term jury nullification is implied to mean, at least from its historical perspective. Traditionally, at least in the history of our country, there have been times of turmoil in our country where certain laws like anti-sedition laws, the Anti-Fugitive Slave Act, prohibition, women voting, there's been a whole collection of different examples of laws that were passed and where people were charged with breaking those laws, and then they were put on trial, and the jury or a member of the jury decided in their own infinite wisdom and discretion and power not to apply the law in that particular case. And I think that's the simplest way to explain that jury nullification is the jury nullifying the effect of a law as applied in a particular case, as applied against a particular defendant, or on its face as being an unjust law. And so the notion that the advocacy that CalFIJA has is to disregard all laws, in some of the emails that I've gotten, is a little bit misplaced, in the sense that I'm not suggesting that we just en banc disregard all laws. I am suggesting that when it comes to criminal charges against a defendant, particularly a defendant where we have some pretty compelling evidence of the disproportionality of wrongful conviction based on race, 75% of which of the exonerations of wrongful convictions were Black defendants that were convicted wrongfully. You got to start asking some different questions about whether or not the jury has the power in that particular case, or any case like that, to disregard the law as applied to that defendant for any reason. And the short answer is yes, absolutely. Judges will tell you what judges will tell you, most of which you can take with a big grain of salt, because part of the instructions, at least here in California, are that you take an oath as a juror to apply the law, and you swear that oath. Well, oaths are oaths. The fact of the matter is that if you're on a jury, you have the raw power, unbridled power, for any reason that you decide not to convict somebody based on reasonable doubt, that you have the ability and the power to do that. Where this thing, I think, goes off the rails a lot is this whole notion of reasonable doubt and what gets in front of the jury, and more importantly, what never gets in front of the jury. And the system is sort of gamed in a way that this gamesmanship is very frustrating, particularly if you're the accused defendant standing trial and you're looking at 25 to life for something you didn't do. I don't know what the solution is, but I do know that there is one final check and balance in our system that allows us, we the people, when we're sitting on a jury comprised of people from the community, a jury of our peers, which in some cases, a lot of these cases is a joke, because it wasn't a jury of their peers, particularly in the preemptory challenges that the prosecution makes to exclude, based on race, certain members of juries in certain trials of criminal defendants. You don't have to take my word for it. Just go read all of the dozens and dozens and dozens of cases that are out there, hundreds of cases actually, and the studies that have been done where this is not speculation, not anecdotal, oh, look at this example. This is actually hard and fast evidence that on its face appears to be a race bias against certain types of jurors, certain ethnicities of jurors in certain cases involving Black and Hispanic and minority defendants. The system is supposed to be blind, not stupid, right? And so we have in our hand, as members of the community, as members of society, when we're called upon to serve on a jury, we have the raw power to nullify any law as it's applied to any defendant based on any standard, including reasonable doubt. And, you know, what you have to ask are different questions, more about what happened. And just keep in your mind, if you're sitting on a jury, you know, has the prosecution, the government, the people, if you will, met the burden beyond a reasonable doubt to tell you, a member of the jury, what happened? If you can't answer what happened, then it doesn't matter who, what, when, where, or why. It doesn't. What happened is the critical nexus upon which everything else should rest. And so you have to be inquisitive, intellectually curious. You have to challenge authority to the extent that in your mind, don't accept everything that comes out of a prosecutor's mouth any more than it comes out of the defense attorney's mouth. Make your own mind up based on weighing that evidence, and then look at that accused and wonder and ask yourself, what else don't I know? What else should I know? And you know, you're going to be told any number of different ways to disregard that, disregard this, strike that. You didn't hear that from the defense counsel's mouth to your ear, blah, 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 right? At the end of the day, the fact is, and there's nobody that can dispute this, the fact is that if you're on a jury in a criminal trial and you vote not guilty, there's not a damn thing anybody can do about that. Period. Hard stop. And can you run amok? Can the jury system run amok? Well, the jury system's kind of rigged anyway, because all of the judges, at least here in California, get together in their little cliquey group, if you will, and they decide who's going to be the jury commissioner. So you know it's not one of we the people. I think that should be a position that is voted on as by the people at large in the general election, and the person should be able to serve a 4-year term, just like any county board of supervisor or the tax collector or the assessor or any other elected official. I think the jury commissioner should be elected at large in a general election by we the people. I think the jury system as a whole, at least here in California, needs to be completely revamped. We need to widen the pool. There's already some steps in legislation that have been enacted that are going to widen that pool. But I got to tell you, this whole notion about the preemptory challenges and the prosecution striking people off of the jury based on race starting next year, 2022, there's a new law in California that will go into effect. And if that happened, and um, it certainly did in Jermaine Smothers' case, I think there were 3 black jurors that were struck. So he had no black jurors on his jury, and none of them from his community of his peers, if you will. And it was a little bit breathtaking to discover how little time that the jury deliberated. And you just got to ask yourself just a lot of different questions about what happened, because it wasn't certainly answered at trial, which is supposed to be a search for the truth. But the last thing that you'll find in a criminal trial is truth. Everybody that gets up there and raises their hand and takes an oath to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth pretty much lies. I don't think that that's a surprise to anybody. And you know, the jaundiced view that I have is that if you're a criminal defendant, you're pretty much screwed unless you got a shitload of money. If you're innocent, ever hoping that you're going to get anything called justice in a criminal trial in California, at least, and in a lot of other states as well. So we've sort of brought this onto ourselves through all of the war on crime, war on drugs, war on this, war on that, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the day, we're left with the human toll, if you will, of thousands of people who had been exonerated, that were, after serving decades in prison for crimes they didn't commit, most of them being black or minority. And you just gotta ask what happened in every one of those cases that would allow the jury not to be the safeguard against an abusive government, or any part of an abusive government, from the police that showed up at the crime scene, to the investigators, to all of the experts, the judges, the prosecutors, all of them. You know, what happened in every one of those cases? In every case that, at least that I've reviewed and have been reading, in the cases of exoneration, it is breathtaking. It is shocking to find that 30 years ago, 29 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, the police practices, the prosecutorial practices, the misconduct, the coercion of witnesses, I mean, just on and on and on and on. It's repulsive. It's just shocking to the conscience. And so if this is the way that the system is set up, and this is what it spits out, it's pretty putrid in my estimation. And the system doesn't deserve me or any other juror that's sitting on a criminal trial jury any allegiance to do anything but keep asking what happened. And if I'm not satisfied, I don't care who the defendant is, not guilty. Reasonable doubt's a pretty wide net in my mind. And, you know, when I see case after case after case after case and read them and find out later that a bunch of it is, if I can be blunt, and I can, is just a bunch of people covering their ass to protect their job, and they have no consequence because of government immunity. This is not a system of justice. This is a system of just us. Screw you. And it's not working. It doesn't work for thousands of cases that have been proven. You don't have to take my word for it. They have been exonerated. They didn't do it. They were framed. They were railroaded, whatever adjective that you want to use to describe that they got screwed. Go ahead and drop in that word, because that's what happened. And so, in wrapping up for tonight's rant, I think that in my mind, should I ever be called to serve on a jury in a criminal trial? I doubt that would happen. But should I? I'm just going to keep my head down and my mouth shut. And if I get selected to serve on a jury, I'm just going to keep asking in my mind, what happened? What happened? I'm not going to be predisposed one way or the other. But I got to tell you something. I've educated myself and read the real cases about real human beings that got screwed by this so-called system. And we have to understand that when we serve on a jury, that is absolutely the last place that can stop any more of this injustice, particularly in cases of anybody that is in a minority, racial or otherwise. I mean, it's just disgusting to sit here and think that these people that are enforcing the laws somehow get a free pass and are not held to account to follow the law. It's for a host of reasons. You know, the corruption of people or human beings being human doesn't surprise me a bit. It's just shocking that the toll that we're paying for the people that are incarcerated for shit that they didn't do. And God help them if they're in California. It's one of the worst, if not the worst, states in the world to try to overturn a wrongful conviction. So, with that said, do your own research, read the history. Don't take anybody's word for anything, including mine. But find out how rich of a history jury nullification is in our own country in the last couple of 150 years, and even back further than that. And in the modern day, from the last 50 years, from the Vietnam era to where we are right now, even, look at all the cases where one or more of the members of the jury were the last check and balance against some poor defendant getting railroaded and thrown into a prison cell to do 29 to life. You know, thank God that we had those people for whatever reason that were able to exercise the power of jury nullification. With that said, have a great Sunday. Hope we don't get any more big dumps of rain like we did just a few days ago here in San Diego. But I guess we need it anyway. Have a great Sunday and peace out.